Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Carlton Rap podcast. I'm lucky enough to be joined by my first special guest of the episode. You might know him from Blue Abroad, the main man behind it, Terry Dehghani. Thank you for joining me today. Just tell me a bit about yourself, about what you do. Obviously, a lot of people would have quite a good idea on what you do, but just give an overview of sort of how you brought about the Blue Abroad channel and, what content you make for people.
Yeah, well, first of all, mate, thanks for having me as your first guest. And I've got to say, you spelt my name perfectly on that board there.
I double-checked that. Yeah. I did double-check it. I did spell it wrong the first time, and then I double-checked, and it's like, he will be pissed off about that if I don't do anything.
It just gives you extra brownie points when you put two H's. It's confusing. Like I said, mate, really excited for you to start your journey and be your first guest as well. In terms of the Blue Abroad channel, it all started end of 2017, but in terms of content wise that was shared publicly, it all started 2018. I was living in Tel Aviv. I was out of the country. I still wanted to stay connected with Carlton. It's a real passion and a love of mine, and we all feel it. And the best way that I found to do that was to start an audio podcast. So I started there in 2018 and really just began from there. Just wanted to share thoughts and connect with people in Australia while I was not there, and then I think everything took a different, like the light bulb moment sort of came. I was at an Arsenal game and I met up with the guys from AFTV and I saw how they do it, and I kind of had this idea of, well, fan engagement is the next wave that's going to come through Australian sport, because it was already happening in Europe and the US. So I guess that was probably the light bulb moment when I realized, no, this is actually like a fully fledged fan channel, fan engagement platform. And I think also when you look at footy media, you're watching the game, you're waiting until Monday night. They might talk about your team for 3-4 minutes and then that's it. So I think there was a greater need for content. So yeah, the idea behind the channel is to be a platform for all content creators to come and contribute. And yeah, we cover everything: previews, reviews, men, women, the whole lot.
Yeah, no, it is. It's brings sort of the whole community, Carlton community, at least together. It's always something anyone can go to at any time. I'll obviously have the links to all of these socials down below for Blue Abroad. On to the next question, sort of your experience with the club. I sort of talk about success through all of sport in general, but obviously you probably were too young to remember the 95 premiership. How do you sort of define success in the football club in general, but just sport in general? How do you see that when you're watching this team play?
Well, the first part to the question is, like, how do I define success? Well, I mean, from an on-field point of view, it's premierships. But then, within the level, below that, I guess you want to be finishing the year having watched a team that's getting better or improving or having a crack or looking like they're on track for improvement. I guess that's what I'm looking for in terms of success. The cup is obviously the main goal, and I guess with that comes the memories and the things that we'll be able to pass down to our kids and grandkids one day, and the stories that we'll be able to share. I think that's really what we're all hoping for.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the main thing I want to see is just consistency. I think success is a consistent thing. I think whenever you see success, it's obviously in periods of longer, a long period of time. Obviously, you see that basketball, they're always in long periods, and they still haven't really done that for a long time. I mean, I can remember the 2011-13 finals, but that's it. But otherwise, it's just been pain for quite a long time. What's your favourite memory, since your time supporting?
Look, obviously the finals are always very special. I actually just did a video on this, like my top 5 favourite moments. And number 1 was not a final. It was round 3, 2012. We had come off a 2011 season where we made finals, and we beat the Bombers. We lost to West Coast by 3 points. Would have put us into a prelim. And 2012 was like the year we were ready to really explode. Yeah. And we smashed Collingwood round 3 really emphatically. We were flag favourites, and it was just a very, very special night. So that's one of my favourite moments ever. Leaving the MCG that night, just looking and feeling that feeling of, we're actually not just a good side, we're the best side. So Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I was dead wrong that night, but yeah.
I mean, I did after that video. I did watch that game, and I remember hearing the commentators. They said they were talking about the betting. They're like Carlton are $5 favourites, equal with Hawthorn for the premiership after that game. And I thought, I don't remember that being so like prolific at the time. I do remember that game, but I don't remember them being like that hot at the time. So it's very interesting. And then the downfall came, obviously.
As it always does.
Yeah, it always does. You're right. On to the next topic of discussion. Obviously, Brian Cook. During the week, the club put out a Twitter, Instagram, all over the socials for fans to put in questions for Brian Cook to answer. And it was quite a great initiative by the club, obviously getting around to all the members and getting their views across. So, well, firstly, did you enjoy the whole talk?
Yeah, mate, I loved it. It was just honest, no fluff. We were told what we needed to hear, not what we necessarily wanted to hear. And I think there's a respect with that.
Yeah. The only thing, I mean, maybe this is sort of off the mark. I guess he's a very business-minded guy. I thought his views came across very business-like, as in more than a football club, came across like a business rather than a football club. I don't know if you sort of got that vibe from it.
Well, I think when you're a CEO of a club, there is always going to be a business side to it, because he's obviously overseeing everything in terms of the organization, and it's the way it's structured. So I can see what you mean in a sense of like when he was talking about structure and subcommittees and all of that, it can sound very businessy. But I mean, he's one of the very few, CEOs who's done if ever, who has done what he has done at footy clubs. So I think there's a balance that needs to be struck between, being all footy and all business, especially when you're a CEO. But yeah, I think time will tell, and I think we'll be very happy with what he leaves the club.
Yeah, no, definitely. It did come across very front. He just sort of fronted up and told it how it is. I've got a couple of quotes here I just sort of want to discuss, see what you thought about them. First one was relating to the question about what to expect from Carlton, the number one thing. And he said an open, genuine and trusting environment. In terms of that, how do they remain accountable to those words? I feel like this year they really, Teague's presses really left you wanting more, if he ever even gave you anything. The players they spoke out. They obviously, but they didn't have what they had to do in those presses. They tell you what they need to tell you about we're trying to improve. I mean, moving forward, how do you actually put the club accountable when they talk about open, genuine and trusting?
Well, that's the hard part, because ultimately all you can do is you can wait until the next press conference happens, or you wait until the next quote is made, and then you wait and you listen, and then you judge, personally, whether you feel like you're being fluffed around or whether you feel like they're just going through the motions. And that's the harsh reality of being a fan. Like we can get upset all we want. And then ultimately, I think we're in an age now with, content creators and, podcasts and whatnot. That's never been around. So like 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there's never really been a medium whereby you as a fan can go on and express your views. You now have, whether it's big footy forums, Facebook groups or YouTube channels or whatever the case may be, Instagram pages where you can comment. That I think is the new way to keep the club accountable, because it's public. People express their views. Sometimes they're very upfront. Sometimes they're harsh. Sometimes they're not harsh enough. Yeah. So I think that's where the accountability comes from.
Do you think, in terms of this whole, I mean, it's pretty much a reset, not much of, I wouldn't consider this new era as a rebuild, more a reset. I think you still kept the same core of players. I mean, do you think that quote sort of related inside the club or, externally about the fans? Because do you think they have the right systems implemented to put that inside a team that, I mean, for the last, 5 years has just suffered from poor leadership most of the time?
I mean, the answer is, mate, like, honestly, I don't know. And none of us know. We hope.
Yeah.
We hope. That's really what it is. That's part of being a fan. That's part of the struggle of being a fan. It's always, you hope it's going to be something you can rely on. And I kind of want us to move away from a team where we're talking about, oh, if this happens, if he's fit, if she's fit, if they do this right. And I want to be able to say, I know what I'm going to get from this person, that department. So it's going to take time, but footy's a funny game. Like it really takes a couple of weeks of doing the right thing for a perception to start changing. So I would hope that there's been enough heartache now amongst the group and they've got that shared pain that has hopefully bonded them. And then, they start turning it around. They're mature now. They're not little babies and draftees anymore. So it's really onto them. And, we sit here as fans and we just hope that we can have something to jump onto, and we hope that they can generate some hype for us to then jump on that and then create this big monster.
So much optimism. I hope this just doesn't come back to bite us in the arse. I'm going to be quite honest. I mean,
well, you know what? It might, but we'll be back doing it again.
I know. We will. Exact time next year. Next one about the synergy in the place. He said a really close DNA. Now, my whole thing, they've kept the same core group. I'm not sure what they've been doing in the past years, but I wonder, do you think bringing in a new system of DNA would help them, or do you build on what they already have? Because obviously a lot of them have seemed a lot closer, especially with the, do it for Doc movement. They do seem a lot closer. So, do you think you sort of transfer what they've already got, or do you sort of start new?
Yeah, I think time creates connection. The more time you're spending together, the more time you know someone, the more experiences that come with that time, good or bad. So the more time the group stay together as a core group, the more connected they're going to be with each other because they've just got those shared experiences. Now, in terms of a new system, again, it's one of those, I don't know, I'm on the outside, not the inside. I'm pretty sure they needed to shake up whatever game plan that they had. It either wasn't the right game plan or it wasn't communicated properly or it wasn't good enough. And so therefore, I think a bit of a change up and a refresher is needed. I think a fresh mentality, a fresh set of beliefs of how to play the game was definitely needed because whatever was in place over the last couple of years, long story short, it just wasn't working. So, yeah, I do think the time for change had come and gone.
Onto sort of leadership, this is sort of one I like talking about because obviously I don't feel like they've got it right for a long time. This is more talking about the actual players. My whole sort of thought process with leadership is that it should always come from the defensive line. They're always seeing across the whole ground. They're always looking up the ground. Do you think that this year at least, the leadership should be shared a lot more? I feel like it's been put a lot on Cripps, and especially with Doherty he's been gone he was gone at least for sort of the back half of the year. I don't think Cripps is a good leader, but I also think he's a better player than he is a leader, and he gets caught up with performing each week. And I feel like there's no one there, and especially in those times where we'd always choke big leads or, concede those 5-6 goal swings. Do we look to share the leadership a bit more, train a couple more players in, having those qualities? Because I think that's what we've lacked a lot over the past, 5-6 years.
I mean, I think they're there. I think you've got Harry in that forward line. You've got Cripps in the midfield, but now you've got Walsh, who is already showing signs of leadership. Yeah. And then you've got Jacob in that back line. And then you've got guys like Ed Kerno, good clubmen, guys like George Hewitt that come with that work rate. They're going to eventuate into good leaders. But yeah, I don't subscribe to the theory of, Cripps has to do it on his own. I don't think that's been the case for a while now. I think 2021 showed that it's not the Cripps show anymore, because if you look at the results of the best and fairest there alone, you've got other people there who are not just in the midfield but spread across the ground, who now really take ownership of leading their respective positions on the ground,
Well, if you had the choice, would you keep the same two captains or would you change?
I would keep Cripps as captain. I don't know where Doc's at. I don't know if I just don't know what's happening, whether he's going to be okay to play, let alone, just get himself right from a health point of view. So if I was guessing, I would say you keep Cripps as captain, because part of being a good leader is You are someone who has gone through, like, being a great leader is not about being perfect from the start of your captaincy to the end. Being a great leader is about the story of starting somewhere, overcoming the challenge that you needed to overcome, and then becoming the great leader that you become. So I think that's part of Cripps' story. Like, he's currently going through these years of just figuring it out. He's had, injury issues and form issues and trying to do it on his own and trying to figure out where to give it off to someone else and where to take a step back and where to, assert himself. So I think this is all just part of the Cripps leadership story, and I'd be keeping it with him because I think Michael Voss was very similar before they started really dominating the Brisbane Lions I'm talking about. Before that, he was kind of going through the same thing. So I'd be keeping Cripps as captain.
No, I slightly agree with you. I think if Doc was fit, I'd probably switch the two. I mean, I guess they are co-captains. I feel like Doherty, like I said, I feel like defensive players have that mindset of always keeping the ground in a certain way, keeping a structure. You see that across, a lot of sporting codes, soccer, rugby. They move as one. And I feel like defenders have the best eyesight to sort of make sure that happens. And I feel like that's where they sort of shut down because, I'm sure Cripps is a good leader, but like ultimately he's in contests, 90% of the time. He can't see what's going on behind him or, across the ground. But no, I do agree with what you're saying. I think hopefully they can build on it. I think Voss has, the confidence he's shown in Cripps, at least from what you've heard in the media. It sounds like they're sort of building on that, definitely 100%. Sort of the last thing on relation to the Brian Cook presser, just one more quote. This was talking about the core values, and he said that they all should align. Now, my question for that is, how do you measure values in a football club? How do you measure that is going in the right direction every week, week in, week out?
You got to watch it. Again, it's a time thing. We're in a really weird situation as fans where we've now been told what's going to be important, what's going to be implemented, but we're really not going to know for probably 12 to 24 months where you get like a really good sample size of how's everything going. Because as a fan, the only real insight you get into what the club is valuing on the inside is team selection, the way they communicate to the fans, the way they play on the field. These are really the only little windows we get to understand what the environment of the club really is, and what's important and the decisions that are being made. So it's really just going to be time. We're going to have to wait and see.
I have this one sort of theory. I've always had this in the back of my head for a long time about the actual players themselves when they get drafted, about supporting a different team and how that builds in. Because, I mean, personally, I guess it's different for these guys who just want to make it to the AFL. But, example, if I turn out to be a pro footballer, I've supported Carlton this deeply and I end up, at West Coast. I don't feel like I could give the same amount of like passion and intensity to West Coast just because of that history I had. So that's where I want to ask this question. Do you think these players that may have supported a past club have the same passion and intensity when they go out on the field each week?
Yeah, of course. And then the reason why I say that is because, I mean, if you're a potential draftee, you're looking to make footy your profession, or something that earns you a living, and that's your dream as a kid. So you might be a Carlton supporter growing up, but West Coast give you that opportunity to be a professional footballer, and to do that for a living. So for a lot of these draftees, if not all of them, it's their dream. So I think there's a new love that develops to the club that gives you that opportunity. So I've got friends who have grown up supporting one club who now work at another club, and I ask them about it and they say, well, you fall in love with the place that gives you the opportunity. So it's a different kind of notion. Now, having said that, when you have Carlton supporters growing up who then start playing for Carlton, I feel like there's something in that's beneficial. Like someone like a Jack Silvani, like he gets it, whatever it is to get about what it means to be a Carlton person, like he gets it. I think that's also why Cottrell is someone that's highly respected on the inside, because he plays with that passion of the fans, No,
definitely. I mean, I just sort of that's sort of the main thing I think about when they lose, embarrassingly. You see them come off, more so the performances. I just feel like that's where that comes into play. Maybe not all the time, but I think sometimes that's maybe where that passion gets lost a little bit, and you sort of you don't care as much when you're out there because ultimately you're getting your paycheck, you're walking off. It's like the club gets slandered more than the players. So it's like, well, I don't support that club. So that's sort of how I see it. But no, it sort of is. That's always been a talking point for me. I always find that quite fascinating. How players, combat that sort of passion growing up. On to the sort of next topic, Liam Jones' retirement. We're not going to be talking about the decision. That's purely on Liam Jones, and we just support the best for him in the future. This chat right now is just about tactically. I mean, firstly, are you upset just by his departure in terms of what he brought to the team?
Yeah, of course. He's a highly respected guy who turned his career around, and I feel like you can never have too many feel-good stories or comeback stories like that at a footy club.
Yeah. I mean, the next sort of talking point, the AFL about compensation picks, doesn't seem like it's going to happen, but if it does, manage to come through, which I doubt. So do you reckon the club should, aim to get someone out of the draft, or do you look to guys like Marchbank, McDonald, Young to fill his position?
Yeah, the second. So, I mean, I think we have what we need there. Lewis Young is a guy who, 22 years old, similar age to Jacob Wiedering. He left the Bulldogs because he wanted to play regular footy. He maybe thought he'd be able to push Liam Jones out at the end of 2022, but all of a sudden the opportunity is right there. I think Mitch McGovern, potentially it could be something that reinvigorates him, where he's in a role that, the ball's coming to him as opposed to him trying to create something as a forward. So, yeah, I'm pretty bullish about what we can do with it. Also, there's like an unpredictability about it. Like none of the other clubs know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and how we're going to set up. So that's exciting. And then, I think when in terms of like drafting a player, I actually don't think we should draft a key position player this year. I think we wait until next year. Because according to the POM, who is my, right-hand man when it comes to draft and all of that, next year's draft is full of key position talent. So I think we're in good shape. I think at some point we needed to replace Liam Jones over the next few years. And if anything, it's just been brought forward, and it just means we've got to get, be a bit more proactive with it than what we would have been.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, obviously you put on your story today about Jasper Chalapa put on his Twitter about Mitch McGovern being super keen. I mean, I sort of support that, and I wrote about that because I like the idea of players who have, sort of been brought up as forwards to transition back. I remember 2020, Jaron Geary sort of did the opposite to that, where he was against the Blues, where he was in the half back line. He got brought up to half forward, and he absolutely dominated. Just because of that experience, obviously, he sort of knows how to, maneuver around those forwards as he's dealing with them half the time. So I do like the idea of McGovern going down back. I think he'd definitely adapt to that role a lot more, especially under the slander he gets usually about his performance. Like, what's your opinion on McGovern as that number one preference to take over Jones?
Yeah, like I said, it's a position where if you put him behind the ball, it helps with him. The ball, the play comes to him, and it's a different focus for him. I'm actually all for it. I think it's a good move. I think obviously we hope that Charlie's going to be fit, so it'll be him and Harry Mackay with Jack Silvani in that forward line, and then I think it's a good opportunity for Mitch to play a role for the side, and I think he's capable. I think he's got all the tools. We as a fan base just haven't quite been able to really get behind him from the standpoint of he had a great year. He hasn't had a great year for whatever reason since he's been at the club. So, injury and form and fitness, and, he's just sort of been a little up and down. And I guess we're just hoping that we can get some good memories with him, because that will ultimately turn the conversation that's been, pretty critical of him because we haven't, for whatever reason, haven't been able to get the value that we paid. But forget about the money for a second. It's just about playing good footy. So we want to, we want him to play well. We want him to play a role for the side where he plays 20 plus games and contributes well. And I think this is a good opportunity.
I mean, in terms of Marchbank, would you prefer Marchbank or Young over McGovern if you had the choice?
Are they all fully fit?
Yeah, all fully fit.
Oh, it's Marchbank for me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess going on that fully fit. I mean, I'm very cautious of Marchbank. I think he starts playing, it will happen again. I just have this sin, and especially I remember when
Touch
Kerno
wood,
came
bro.
back.
Touch wood.
I know, but like I remember every time with Kerno when he came back, every time he jumped up, you brace, and you feel it in your legs as well every time it goes down. I mean, if Marchbank does get injured again, what does the club do with him?
What do you do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, do you just keep supporting and hoping? I really don't know. It's a hard one to answer.
I mean, I mean, it seemed good from the club. I, heard reports about him coming back on a modified program before Christmas. So whether that means fully fit by round one, not too sure. But I think in terms of starting 22, I'd put Marchbank into that spot. Statistically, he's over the careers, although Marchbank played significantly a lot lower games than Jones, he had better averages in that sort of role. So I think Marchbank fits right in. McGovern, I think you sort of have to take a risk with him because if he is super keen, you train him and then it doesn't work out. Does he sort of, and I'm sure his forward role will sort of being lost by that time. So do they take that risk with McGovern, or do you sort of just say, nah, stick to where you are?
No, I mean you got to do something with him. I mean, look, at the end of the day, they're all keen to play a role for the side. So
yeah,
I think Mitch McGovern will do whatever he's asked of Mitch McGovern. I think he's a real team guy. There's risks with everything. I mean, they go to train at Body Fit or wherever they train. There's always a risk. I think you can't think of things with fear, like, oh, let's not do this in case this happens. Like, shit happens. It's life.
Yeah. On to the last two scenes, just wanted to have a discussion about the women's and men's program just in general at the moment. Obviously, it's a bit dry with what's going on, not a lot happening. Pre-season has started for both sides. Just firstly on the AFLW team, just on the youth. First question, like the new generation of youth, do you think that can sustain competitiveness into this next season?
Yeah, I think so. I think they do have a lot of youngsters, and yes, they have lost a few senior, experienced players. They might struggle a little bit early just with such a new group. But when you really look at the core of it, especially if you look at that back line, plenty of talent, plenty of leadership, plenty of experience. I think if somebody else can step up to help Maddie Prespakis in that midfield consistently, like you're looking at like a Grace Egan or a Lucy McAvoy, you're looking at one of those. If they can, come to the party, I think we're going to be pretty good. I mean, you look at the forward line; it's a little smaller than the conventional forward line, but it actually works. It's dynamic, and it sort of saw last season once Taylor Harris, stopped playing, or when she didn't play, it was very unpredictable with their forward line because it was so quick. You got the best goal kicker of the competition in Darcy Vescio there. So yeah, I'm pretty excited with what they can do. I like the makeup of the team.
Well, no, I'm definitely enjoying the sort of the youth coming in because obviously I think probably anyone in that team that's about 25 or older didn't really get that experience going through the 18s and like the 16s. So now they're all coming through the NAB league, and I think that's a lot better because they're actually playing against girls that are like strong at what they do, and they've got a lot of strengths in the footy area. Whereas they sort of, I think most of them like struggle to sort of find that bond with the young kids at the moment because they didn't have that experience. So I'm sort of loving that they're bringing in a lot of the younger generation because they do bond very well with each other. And you sort of see already they do connect very well. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But sort of on that bringing in youth, obviously you sort of have to move on others, and we have lost quite a lot of leadership. So do you think that's a good or a bad thing? Because I sort of look at this positively and think, well, you lose a lot, so you have to teach a lot to be leaders. So, what's your opinion on the leadership sort of expectations across the team?
Yeah, well, it's an opportunity, isn't it? And I think the AFLW, the hard part about the AFLW, because it's so early in its inception and you want to create memories with the players who become those that latch you into their team and the club, is the high turnover year in, year out, opportunities. We're talking about part-timers who are not, paid as full-timers, and they've got other jobs and they've got other things. And, the league is slowly, catching up to make sure there is that full-time opportunity for them. But I think the opportunity now for the next wave of leaders will come through. First of all, Karen Harrington is good as a, she's fine. I think she can lead this team for pretty much the next 4 to 5 years, really. If she's playing, the next 4 or 5 years, I don't see why she's not captain. And Maddie Press-Parkes is still really young. I think you look at Charlotte Wilson, she's very young, but she's got leadership qualities there as well. So, wherever there is a void, there is always an opportunity. And I think we'll start to see the next layer of leaders really emerge.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm like looking forward to this season. I think last season, I hate high expectations just anywhere. I think
why?
Just because you have to perform. You can't afford to mess up, and especially when the season is like 8 or 9 games, and who knows with COVID anymore. You might lose a game, especially. And I like that expectation of just you can go out there and have fun, even though it sounds sort of cringeworthy. It's like you just go out there and you play with a bit of freedom. And that's sort of what I like with this team, is that there's actually no there is expectations obviously, but there's no premiership. Like I reckon the team is like a very dark horse team this year that can just sort of creep up, win a couple games, and I reckon if they get into finals, they could do anything. To be quite honest, I think that there's a lot of potential in that side. Like comparing that to the men's side, where obviously we every year we slam them finals, which I stay away from that. I never say finals, apart from this year where I do expect it, but like the previous years, I just stay away from it because I think it definitely has got to them psychologically over the past. So that's where I sort of see the expectation side being a bit harsh on teams. Going on to that, what is your expectation for the team? Ladder position, sort of just where you expect a finish, I guess.
Yeah, I always say, because 2015 we start the rebuild, and I always said to myself, well, we've got to wait a few years before finals is even a question. And 2020 was probably the first year where I said, yep, I think we're good enough to play finals with this group. Didn't happen. 2021, I definitely thought that we were good enough to play finals with the additions. So it was there, and it's the same for 2022. Having said that, I think with supporters, we want finals. We want them to take the next step. But I think we want to, I'll speak for myself. I want to leave 2022 feeling like, gosh, we are really headed in the right direction. We play hard enough for long enough. If we lose, it shouldn't be by much. I want teams to have to really lift to beat us if they do beat us. I can handle losing, but what I can't handle is watching them and then coming to the end of a game and questioning their effort and desire and, 12 of them not laying tackles at the half, things like that. I don't want to see any of that anymore. They're mature enough. They're old enough. They've got enough ownership. They should be able to take enough ownership of their careers now. And I think finals is a fair expectation.
So moving on with the men's team, how do you who do you think was the best pickup for the side?
I think Lewis Young long-term will be a really good pickup for us. But in terms of the immediate impact, it's a real toss-up between Chera and Hewitt. I think the obvious answer is Chera, but I think Hewitt's going to do that dirty work, that grunt work, that, the things that go unnoticed, which I think we don't have too many players that do that. So I'll go out on a limb and I'll say Hewitt.
On to just a quick question. How long do you give the coaching panel to get consistent results?
You need a couple of years. We gave Teague a couple of years. So I think that's the reality. We've got to give this we've got to give it some time. The group, the makeup of the group, the age profile of the group is really in that window where they should be, good enough or contending for finals and a premiership. So yeah, it really is. I guess let's judge it after 2 seasons or maybe 3.
Well, this is sort of the question I ask a lot of people in terms of where they take the next step, because I still don't feel like they've taken it. But my whole thing is, until you beat Richmond, you're never going to take it, because I think psychologically they lose and it stuffs everything up. And I know it's round 1, but when you've suffered and lost for a long time, that's enough. That's enough. So where do you think the next step needs to be actually taken, or where you'll know, where you'll have that moment like that Collingwood game where you think they're in the right direction?
Well, I'll tell you when. The next time a team kicks 3 in a row on us, are we able to get that 4th one and not let it become 4 in a row or 5 in a row? That's ultimately what it's going to be. If I see something shift on the field after because the game is a beautiful game. It's a game of momentum. So we're going to get scored against. We're going to get beaten. We're going to have quarters and patches where the other teams are on top. I will be looking to see how we get better in those moments, not when things are going our way and, the ball's bouncing our way, but when things are not going our way, how are we able to respond?
Yep. And just one more last question. What's a big call you have for the season upcoming? Something really random, something you think is just a big call.
Will Setterfield will be back in the best 22.
Thank you. Yeah, done. I love Will Setterfield. He's been my favourite since he's come, and it has been quite upsetting not seeing him in the side. So I do like that big call.
Yeah,
and it's a good one. Well, that wraps up today's episode. Thank you, Terry, for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts and comments below, or the socials to the Blue Abroad page will be down below. And we'll catch you in the next one. And go the Blues.
Go Blues.